Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are going live right now. It's like we're having a technical problem. Give me one moment. All right, looks like we might be there now. Hold on one moment. We've got lost somebody. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us live today. Sorry for those technical glitches in the beginning there. Hey, Philip, it's good to have you back with us today. Philip was one of our guests last week. Philip, you can stay and hang out with us, but you don't have to unless you want to, but it's great to have you with us. I'm excited to have with me my co-host for the day, again, Ms. Tawana Lee, our resident social worker, and Ms. Raven Luckett, who is our resident certified addiction counselor, too. And she is awesome. They are really great at what we do. They are available if anyone needs some support around areas of mental health and substance use. And but they are able and wonderful co-hosts. So we're going to have a great time today. We have a very special guest with us today. One of the first times that we've had someone this young on this podcast. Her name is Destiny, and she is 20 years old and will come on as soon as she's ready to show her face. We're going to invite her to come on and share her story with us, hoping that we will be able to continue to really grow what we're doing. And on the bottom there, you'll see we have a number if you are looking for any assistance for the DC Behavioral Health line. That number is 8887-WE-HELP. This program is sponsored in part by the DC Health and Health HIV. So we are excited to be here. This is Thrive Live, where we're talking with real people, with real situation stories, and coming up with a real solution. So we want to share today. Tawana, Raven, you want to greet our folks?
Good afternoon. My name is Raven Luckett, and I am a certified addiction counselor in DC, Maryland area, and been counseling. Next month be 25 years in the field, and just want to say hello to everybody. And I'm glad to be here, glad to be a part of this team, and glad to be a part of this experience, reaching out into the community, trying to help people get better and do better.
Yeah. And Tawana?
Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to make this through without losing connection. So we're doing intros, right?
Yes.
So Tawana Lee, I'm a social worker, mental health therapist. I work with Raven, but in a different department. I've been in DC since 2019, and currently I work in a school. And I look forward to hearing your story.
Absolutely. I am having some technical problems. Just want to let you all know that if I drop out, you're in good hands with Raven and Tawana, and I'll be back in as soon as I can make it happen. But right now, Destiny, we are so excited to have you with us. So excited to hear your story. It has been a pleasure and a joy to have had an opportunity to meet you prior to this broadcast and have a little bit of insight into your story and why you'd be a great guest for us here on Thrive Live. So Destiny, we're going to give you a little bit of time to share your story, and then we'll talk. We'll ask some questions. We'll share some insights, and we'll see where we go. Philip, you'll be welcome to join in and jump in as you feel comfortable doing. But Destiny, take it away. Tell us about Destiny.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Destiny. Like Daryl said, I'm 20 years old. I have a pretty extensive history when it comes to mental illness, considering I was diagnosed with PTSD at an extremely young age. I had a really rough childhood, which followed, followed me throughout my development, throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, to a certain extent, even now as well, although it got much better. I'm the mother of three kids. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I have twins who are just a few months shy of being a year old, a girl and a boy, and they're the light of my life. And I went through a lot of things that got me to the point where I am now, especially considering me being a mom of three kids at my age. Um, it was been a really long journey for me. And throughout my entire life, I had a lot of support from a lot of people. One of the hugest supports that I have, even to this day, is my grandmother on my father's side. And she took me in from foster care when I was 5 years old. And she raised me all the way up until I was about 16. At which point her health, she was an older woman when she got me. So at that point, I actually went back into foster care, had to do a little more journeying with the CFSA system. But while living with my grandmother, I had literally gone through about 40 to 50 therapists. um, After a while, I was with a specific psychologist for about 6 years. And then after that, he had removed me off of my medications. So I had actually been on medication since I was also very young, for, like I said, my PTSD, as well as depression, and believe it or not, also sleeping problems, which can come hand in hand with PTSD to a certain extent. Growing up was pretty rough for me, considering I knew a lot of things that a kid at my age shouldn't have known about. But at the same time, I like to think that all of that knowledge built me into a person who, although I knew too much, I was very mature at a young age, which helped me continue to develop very maturely as I got older. And I'd say it wasn't until fairly recently that I started to understand more the downsides of being mature so young. But on the flip side of it, I'm still very thankful for it. And I'm thankful that my grandmother knew how to raise me knowing that my mind was mature. I used to have temper tantrums, nightmares. I even had my ins and outs of mental hospitals because at the age I was, it's very hard for a parent to know just how to help their child. And my grandmother was a parent who always wanted to seek help from me because she knew I needed it. And I'm also thankful to her for that. So by the time I was in middle school, I had gotten to a point where I wasn't really seeing hospitals anymore. I was much more functional, productive. At the age of 14, I was taken off of all of my medications, and I started to live a life trying to understand that feelings are normal. For example, I had very bad depression, extremely bad anxiety, but learning that I was functional and people naturally get sad or naturally are anxious made it easier for me to cope and realize I wasn't an outlier and I wasn't just alienated. I met a lot of other kids my age through all of the group therapies, even in the hospitals that I was in for those momentary times. And I started to realize there's a lot of kids who need help and just don't know the words to use to ask for it, or their parents want to help them and they're not exactly sure how. So it's definitely a long journey when it comes to mental illness and overcoming the things that as a person, especially growing up in age, that you learn to see things from different levels. When you're a kid, you don't understand certain things, but when you get older, you start to comprehend them better. I understand why I go through this. I'm able to come to terms with what happened to me in my early life. And all of those things start to, piece by piece, build your character. And the way that you carry yourself is what truly, I feel like, is what truly gives a person their motivation on how far forward they're going to be able to go. I feel like I went through some extremely rough things, but the mind frame that I had, thanks to all of the support I had, not just my grandmother at an early age, I had a lot of community support workers. Not all of them lasted, but one of them did. And eventually, I did find a wonderful therapist who I worked with for a long time. Even previous therapists, I have come to find out they still stay in contact with my grandmother. Apparently, I left an impression on them because I tend to be really happy despite all the things that I've been through. People who know my story, the ins and out of it, some of them really wonder how I've been so happy or motivated. And for me, I even went through a phase where I thought something was wrong with me because a lot of the therapists I was going through between those 40 to 50, they wanted to say that I just hadn't come to terms with it and I was trying to avoid the pain. I didn't want to acknowledge it. But the truth was, I acknowledged it. I knew what happened and I was okay with it. And to them, they didn't think I should be okay with it. For me, I found peace in the fact that if it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't be who I was. That doesn't mean I'm grateful for it, but I'm content with who I became afterwards. And sometimes it's really hard to feel that, but once you do, it really pushes who you really are inside. And ever since a young age, I was extremely determined to do a lot of things in my life. I wanted to initially at the as early as third grade, I wanted to go into science. I remember I wanted to be an aerospace engineer and I wanted to be an astrophysicist. And I was doing it. I was sponsored by NASA. I got scholarships. They flew me down to Tennessee to see the full solar eclipse. I had a lot going for me, but at the same time, as I got older, I had to also understand that motivations can change. Ever since I was young, I knew I wanted to be a mother. I wasn't going to make it happen just out of nowhere. Because of what happened to me, I also knew that sometimes parents don't make the best decisions and a child will suffer for it. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be a mother because I wanted to have kids and be a parent to them that I didn't get to have. And that aspiration of mine grew to outweigh certain motivations that I had. At certain times, I also got mixed in with bad crowds, just like any teenager. And I grew up very naive and very gullible. A lot of times, a parent, especially when you go through very traumatic things, they want to shelter you, they want to keep you safe from it. And they don't necessarily always, they'll tell you how to prevent it. But if it happens, that doesn't mean they told you how to deal with it if it's happening. So I went through things in my teenage years that triggered previous trauma because I didn't know, okay, it happened. I knew how to prevent it, but I don't know what to do now. I felt like I was on my own a lot of times. And all that did was add into my maturity, my feeling the need to take responsibility, and my overall determinedness. No matter how long it took me, I made sure I finished high school. I'm 20, I just graduated, and I could have graduated with the class of 2020, but I didn't. And I'm not going to blame it on the fact that I had children because when I found out I was pregnant, I took the steps to go to an alternative high school where I could work online. I had no excuse other than the daily things going on in my life at the time. And even though that's not an excuse, it's something real that everyone goes through. At a certain point, I used to smoke weed. I started smoking fairly young as well. Initially, not by choice. It was part of the bad crowd. And I transferred myself out of that high school. Every high school I went to, I transferred myself because I was like, this isn't working. I got to go to a new one. So, of course, that caused delays. But in my eyes, I was doing what I thought was best. And in the end, it was. So when I transferred out of that high school, I got into a new crowd. And in this day and age, I also realized that weed is something that it seems like every teenager is doing to build some type of social connection or bond with people, to make friends. And it became a daily part of my life, even up until the point where I found out I was pregnant. And me having my first child, don't get me wrong, I had the young mindedness to think I know how to take care of a baby. And to a certain extent, I did. But I didn't know once it's yours and you birth it, it's a completely different feeling from just taking care of a child. I took care of all of my sisters as I got older. I'm the oldest of about 9 of us, I believe now, all girls. And my father was very adamant that I was going to take care of them. So I grew up taking care of these kids. I grew up with that mentality of I love children. I wanted to help them. I love tutoring kids. And then I gave birth to my own child and I'm like, no one can touch her. You know, it's a completely different feeling and it made me want to do better. But I also knew I had to do the right thing. So I ended up going through even domestic violence with that child's father. And I stuck around because my parents didn't stay together for me. And I had to go through this whole 4-year journey with him because that's how long I was in the relationship with him. And down the line, I ended up getting pregnant with twins by the same man. And when they were born, I finally put my foot down because for my first daughter, I made the ultimate decision that it was in her best interest to give her to my family. My mother took me from my family when I was 3 years old, brought me to DC, and lost me to CFSA. And that's what got me in foster care. And I wasn't going to let that happen to her. The first person I called was my Aunt Sandy, who sadly passed away a few months ago, and my Aunt Rosalind. And my oldest daughter, I'm down in South Carolina right now, and she's here with me. She goes home today, but I'm so happy I made that choice because I saw it as my mother had that ability, but she wanted to be selfish because she wanted to be a mom so bad and she knew she couldn't do it. She knew she needed help. She knew she had her own mental illnesses. She knows it runs in the family. And I wasn't going to make that same mistake. And now I look at her and she's so happy. She's growing up the same way I wish I had. She has the family, the home that I feel like I lost. I never lost it, but I feel like growing up, switching home so much, I didn't have a home. And now for my twins, as I'm fighting for them, I'm doing everything in my power because I'm sitting here like, it's not going to happen a second time. I left the violent relationship. I got my own apartment. I got my own job. I actually had 3 of them. Right now I have the 2, but at one point I had 3 of them. But it was really, I was trying to do so much that I was tiring myself out. So I had to learn how to still take care of myself at the same time. But I was so happy and so proud. I didn't care. I was getting my baby's clothes. I was making sure I saw them, working my schedule all over the place. And I was just happy that I was doing it. And now I get to spend so much time with my twins. And I look back and I think to myself, if could have just done this earlier, if I could have stopped smoking earlier, if I could have gotten away from those negative energies and negative people earlier, I could have gone down the same route and been so much farther. And I take that not to have a pity party, but to continue to motivate myself. Because I know at the end of the day, everything that I want, I'm going to work for it. I'm going to make sure that I get it. And so far, everything's been going just as I hope. It's taken a little while, but I expected that. and I'm not overly harsh on myself anymore to the point where I'm upset at how long it took. I was so proud I graduated that I cried. I was crying all over my babies because they came to my graduation. I was crying all over everything. But it wasn't, I had not for a single second was I mad that it took me those extra 2 years. I was proud that I finally did it. And just yesterday, I found out I was accepted to UDC for nursing. So I sent those papers in as well. So everything is, your life is always going to be a journey. No matter how far you get, you're always going to look back and reflect on it. And that's all I've ever done. I try to be transparent with myself and other people, and I try to be as mature as I can, but I also now acknowledge that I am still young and I do still have a lot of things to learn, and I still have a long way to go in my healing process. And to be honest, to a certain extent, I do feel like I will always be healing, because I don't think the pain of life is ever going to stop. But the joys in life definitely help make it, easier. It makes it go by. It makes you feel proud. And that's the point that I've gotten to.
Destiny, thank you for so much for sharing your story and so much of your life. Who knew someone could tell 20 years of living in 25 minutes, right? Or less. But thank you so much for sharing. I have a question. When you mentioned earlier about getting into some of the difficult crowds with some of your peers and changing high schools and things like that, and you mentioned marijuana, was there a time with any of those crowds where there were other kinds of drugs being used by in the crowd? Did you participate in any of those kinds of things? How did you, were there things you were doing after they took you off your medication? Did any of that happen to you, or you sort of managed by going with the weed and then getting away from the bad crowds?
So, well, to be honest, I do think I never graduated or upgraded to anything else. I stuck with weed because to a certain extent, the adults that I had around me, I won't say they influenced me, but for some reason, I remember everything from my young age. And one of my best memories is when my dad gave me a whooping because I found weed in his dresser. And I was going to take it home to grandma and be like, "Grandma, what's this?" And he realized it was missing, and he came up to me and he was like, "Give it here." And I knew what he was talking about, because my dad, the relationship I have with him is a very, very straight line. So my entire life I've seen weed, I've heard weed. It's just in, I'm Black. And every time in the household I grew up in, my grandmother was always telling me about things that at the age I didn't need to know about because she didn't want me to get into it. And at the time, I also felt like I didn't fit in with my own race. I'm very fair skinned. She raised me in what a lot of the kids I went to school with, a rich white neighborhood. So they called me the rich white girl. But my grandmother struggled to put food on the table sometimes just to pay rent so that I lived in a safe place, because she was trying to protect me. And I remember the first time I actually willingly smoked, I had came home and my grandfather said, "I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed. I mean, I smoked weed when I was your age, so I can't be mad. I'd be a hypocrite." So when you hear things like that, they give you a certain level of leeway to pick and choose which route you're going to take. And at that age, I was about, like I said, 13, 14, when I was hanging out with people who were in their early 20s and late 20s. That's how my mind worked. I couldn't get along with people my age. So all these adults, eventually, they became my closest friends. Some of them were actually really good friends. I'm still close to them to this day. The other ones, I see what life did to them, if you get what I mean. So I'm around these people who they're all doing it. And yes, they were drinking, they were doing all types of stuff. But in my head, I knew my parents did weed, So weed must be okay. They didn't tell me anything about any of the other stuff. I don't know about any of that. And of course, my grandma had educated me on synthetic things. She had brought home pamphlets one day, but I also got caught up in it's a plant. What can it do? No one ever died from weed. Like, those were the friends in high school that eventually surrounded me. And it wasn't them that I was doing this with, it was the people I trusted, which were those older people, the ones who I saw as big brothers who anytime they had the chance, genuinely defended or took care of me. Some of them used to make sure I got home by curfew. They'd put me in an Uber. So some of them, like I said, were really good friends, and that built the trust that I had with them. And me knowing that they weren't going to let me do anything crazy, when you have those thoughts, it clouds the overall judgment of should I be doing this. And I went on like that until the point I think weed became a major issue when I got into my relationship, and my children's father is a complete stoner. So it had gotten to the point where I was smoking every day, and it wasn't affecting me in a bad sense, in the sense that I was still doing my schoolwork. What made my schooling start to decline was I was still looking for love, and I started focusing on my relationships more than my schoolwork. So there was definitely a lot of other things going around, but in my head, I knew better not to partake in those things, because at the end of the day, I trusted what my family has done and had genuinely said to me over what my family hasn't done. Meaning, if my grandma and grandpa didn't do it, then obviously it's not something to be done. But if they can look at me and say, I did it and I'm disappointed in you, then I trust that, and I trust them in the sense of, then I'll probably stop too, if you get what I mean. I remember grandma had told me when she used to smoke cigarettes and she stopped. And I had a brief little moment where I followed in her footsteps, and then I stopped. So, but that was when I was older and it was easier to not get caught up in it. So the age definitely made it harder for me.
Daryl looks frozen. Thank you, Destiny, for your story. So I guess I'll jump in. Um, yes. Thank you once again. Your story was, I mean, you did a fantastic job. Yeah, I mean, yes, you say you're a baby. You got a long way to go. So I'm starting at the top where you mentioned about you learned at 14 years old how being a how functional depression and anxiety were normal, right? But you learned that it's not normal, but it's been normalized, right? So I love how you pointed that out. So what was it that your grandma said, or how was her parenting style that guided you through living with that anxiety and depression?
This is actually going to sound really funny, but my grandmother was the complete opposite. So my grandmother was a type of parent who was like, you need this medicine. And my grandmother was like, you need your medicine. So when I was 14, I wasn't just taken off of my medication. I went for military training at Fort AP Hill. And while I was on the base there, the time that I take my medicine, the nursing station was closed, and they can't give me my medication to keep on me, and I can't take it at a different time of the day. So while I was doing my training, I actually went through withdrawals. My medication was so high, I gained 100 pounds in a year. Um, you probably have heard of it, Abilify. It has one of the side effects is extreme weight gain. So I was real slim, and in 1 year, I was a balloon. And when I started going through withdrawals, I knew it was happening. I was running because it's military, and I can tell the difference. I was very athletic throughout my life, so I can tell the difference between a heat stroke and the sky is waking. You know what I mean? And I was seeing the spectrum of colors while I'm running. So when she picked me up, I told her I didn't take my medication. And she said, why? I explained to her the nursing station was closed. Immediately, oh no, we got to get you on your medication. But I had my psychologist appointment the next day. Well, not next day, but the next week. And because I went to him monthly, I went and he looked at me and he said, well, if it's out your system, you say you had withdrawals from it. It's out your system. Come back in a month. Let's see how you did. So for that month, I didn't take medicine. Grandma really didn't like it. She felt like I needed it to be okay, to be functional. And it surprised her that entire month I was okay. And she went back and he asked her, and she really didn't have anything to say to back up why she felt like I needed it. She watched me from a young age struggle. So she couldn't see me as the older me yet. And she was upset when he said, let's try another month. And it got to the point where she didn't take me to him anymore, but I also still wasn't on my medicine. So it was pure chance that I got taken off. But when I was taken off, I started realizing I was okay without it. I genuinely was okay. And then I had genuine moments where, I didn't get the best grade and I felt sad. Or I was also bullied throughout school. So I got bullied one day and it was just really hard for me, but I was okay. And I would have never realized that I was actually okay. And all I needed to do is learn how to handle those human levels of feelings if I wasn't taken off of my medication. And over time, grandma, she calmed down about it as I got older because I was also able to express to her, hey, Granny, look, I think I need to go back to the hospital. And she would listen to me. Genuinely, I think it was in sixth grade. My puberty really started kicking in. My medication, the dosages weren't working for my body chemistry, and I was struggling. And I said, Grandma, I want to go back to Dominion, which was one hospital that I highly recommend because it was wonderful. They really did help me. And I was in Dominion for about a month. I went back to school, and they changed my dosages, and I was good. When eighth grade came around, I think I had brought it up one more time. I ended up not going, but it's because I worked through that little rough patch. So being exposed to all those medications, all the therapy at such a young age made me grow up thinking about my life surrounding my mental illness. So I was very self-aware. And as I got older, I was better able to express it in a way that Granny was able to receive it. I learned how to talk to my grandma. And after that, things got a lot easier until I hit the teenage years, which is where, she couldn't tell whether I was having a mental meltdown or if I was doing what a normal teenager does. Because between my dad and his sister, my Aunt Monica was a wonderful child. She did everything by the book. She didn't give Granny too much of a hard time. And my dad, he left grandmother when he was 9, so she didn't raise him through his teenage years. And when I hit my teenage years, I feel like I hit a certain level of the rebel stage that grandma hadn't experienced before. And she attributed that to the crowd I was around. And she thought I was being manipulated because I was naive. And she thought I was gullible, which she wasn't wrong. I was very sheltered. But I also, to this day, I have a very positive, optimistic mindset. So even if you tell me something negative, I'm going to still sit there and say, well, maybe the sun will still come out and it's raining outside. That's me. So to this day, she and I still kind of butt heads a little bit because she always sees the possible downside. And I always see it's going to be okay. Everything's going to work itself out. So, but at the same time, she grounded me by constantly reminding me. It was annoying. I'm not gonna lie. I called it that. I said it was annoying, it was irritating, but she grounded me in the sense of repeatedly reminding me there is a negative, there are bad people. And I realized I didn't want to label someone bad just because of what I went through.
Well, thank you so much again, Destiny, for sharing so much insight into your story. Um, so, what is it like, Tawana? Am I frozen? Can y'all hear me?
We hear you.
Yeah.
Um, so, what? Now you're 20, and you've got three children, two of which you are working to recapture and gain, and the one that is with family.
Yep.
What is that like for you now? What are your thoughts around your own mental health now, mental health for them? You know, if your parents had something going on and you had something going on, do you have thoughts about for them and what might you do about that, and what's going on in your head right now around all of this stuff?
Absolutely. I've heard a lot of my family in South Carolina, my mother's side. Apparently, it's common knowledge. We all know that my mother's offspring got problems. That's the joke we make. But we make it in a loving family way because it didn't start with my mom. My grandmother had mental illness, and her mother had it. So my great grandma. And it's when people think it's not genetic. I used to want to think it wasn't, but to a certain extent, behavioral patterns are just, it's in your children. And even now, like having the three of them together in one sitting, even though the two youngest are still babies, before coming down here, I thought it was just a boy girl thing. I used to say Astrid was lower in my tummy, so she didn't get a lot of attention, my daughter. So when she came out, I like to think she's just jealous. You know, her brother got all the attention because he was up top. But I'm looking at how she acts towards him, and she'll pull his hair. She will do anything to mess with him. And she has a little bit of a mean streak already. And my oldest daughter, oh, she got a real mean streak. And one of the things that runs in my family on my mother's side is definitely temperament problems. My mom had three daughters, including me, and my sister right after me. She kind of got the temperament problems a little worse than the rest of us. But it's like each of us have a certain piece of my mom, mental illness wise. Like I got my mom's depression and bipolar symptoms. Because I was never fully diagnosed with bipolar. They said I had symptoms of it because my mood will change and switch. My sister after me, she has the anger for sure. She acts just like mom apparently when mom was a teenager. And our youngest sister, she's just really to herself. We have yet to really see how she's going to get because she's not fully a teenager yet. But it seems as though once we become a teenager, that's when it really kicks in. And my oldest is only 2 years old, and she's feisty, and sometimes she's really violent. Like if she wants you to look at her and you're not looking at her, she'll walk up and grab your face and just make you look at her. It's like she's trying to snap your neck. Other times she'll get mad and she'll hit things. She was this doll baby that she was just hitting on everything. And when she has her tantrums, they're really bad. I see my old tantrums, but just a watered down version of it because she's younger. But when she's mad, it gets bad. And even if she's only cranky, it gets bad this entire day because she woke up just a little too early. She was very violent with us. And I feel like I would not be doing her safe justice just writing it off as, oh, she's a baby. I think knowing my family's history, I have to take into account that's them genetics kicking in. And funny thing about it is my son doesn't do any of that. He's cool, calm, collected, but he gets the brunt of everything that they do. And we can giggle about it because they're young, but I do worry about them as they get older because they don't just have it from my mother's side, they have it from my father's side. And my dad definitely has been diagnosed with things that he doesn't want to acknowledge or get help for. And my grandmother, as I grew up, she kept saying broken children come from broken homes. So it's very hard for me to just water things down to their age. I have to really think about, oh, they're they have these genes in them that need to be taken seriously as they get older. And I try to keep that in mind at every stage that they go through. Because even when my first daughter was a baby, I saw things in her when she was real feisty that made me think about it. And I'm like, she's gonna keep this up as she gets older, and she has. So I try to keep those things in mind as well.
Well, I think you're doing it. You're giving us an example of awesome resilience. I would say for someone that's been through what you've been through in your life, and that you're only touching the surface of it. I'm sure, but we are grateful that you're sharing. We're very proud of you. Proud that you graduated high school. That whenever you did it, that you did it right. That you're going to DC. Philip, you want to throw something in there?
But I'm just amazed listening to, this similar to my story. And especially with the grandmother, my grandmother raised me as well, and until I was 14 to 15, and then I left. But like I was saying, she speaks very well. You can only go through something to learn, and it seems that she went through all that at a young age. See, I was starting to go through this stuff at an age, but I was a man at 14 and 15. I had to be. And it's like what she went through is part of the same thing. And I just commend her for her growth and to make it this far. Uh, and she's doing great. She sounds well. She got her mind together. She knows what she want to do. And she got beautiful kids. So that's a blessing. I just want to tell her to keep on pushing it. Let other people hear your story. I just shared it on my social media, but I got a lot of young people that's in my family, and they need to hear stuff like this. They need to hear things because they had the silver spoons in their mouth. Everybody didn't have the silver spoons in their mouth. Uh, so I'll be wanting them to hear. They're your age. I'll be wanting them to hear some of the things that they can be going through if they don't listen and try to, pay attention to stay in school. That's definitely, like, I stayed in school too. That's awesome. Like, I just commend you a lot. So you just keep doing what you're doing. Keep the babies right and do what's right. I can see you being a mentor already. Like, that's where I'm looking at.
And one thing I want to encourage you to, Destiny, is that while there can be things that are passed on from families, and Tawana and Raven and all of us can talk a lot about those kinds of things, what's really important is what you put in place now with them, other kinds of behavioral things you can do, other kinds of ways of learning to help them learn different ways of handling those emotions and that behavior. So you being aware of it is great. Raven, you have been listening, I know, intently, because that's what you do. Anything you want to throw out or ask or offer to Destiny?
All of you have really, summed it up. But Destiny, I'm in awe. I've heard a lot of things in 25 years. But for your age, I am totally blown away, because to go through it all and to be as young as you are and to articulate it the way you just did. Philip, how you doing? My name is Miss Raven, and we talked about you being, being a mentor, you can be a motivational speaker for the people your age group. They need to hear you are no longer a victim, you are a survivor. And to lay it out that eloquently so that everybody listening has a clear ear to understand exactly what you've been through in 20 minutes for a 6 year span of really understanding it. Wow. Wow. All the medicine, all the doctors, all the therapists, all the hospitals, and I get it. You started off, and that didn't touch on that too much afterward because it talked about panic and depression. Well, starts off from the PTSD, from the trauma. Yeah, all of that stuff comes from what happened to you before all of that.
Yep.
So to survive it so eloquently, and thank God for grannies. Oh my. I was raised by my grandmother as well.
Absolutely.
I left home at 16, so I know what it is to be raised by grandma. And they are so protective. And I was the first girl, and I am also the oldest girl. So I get it. I didn't have nine, but I had two that raised and be a part of their life and everything. But to have gone through what you went through and for it to be so traumatic, it's interesting how you took to the marijuana, 15 years ago, I was teaching how marijuana had over 100 different drugs in it. So you can imagine what it's got in it now, along with fentanyl.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that it wasn't taking people's lives, it's taking people's lives today. So I'm
Mhm.
glad that you're not smoking for today. However, I'm shocked that you didn't pick up alcohol because most people with anxiety and depression get stuck on alcohol because it'll mask all of that. And that was good for you. Good for you. To be a mother to three children and try to let the little girl in you survive, grow up. That's what recovery is all about, going back to rescue the baby. That's what I teach my consumers today, going back to rescue the baby. Because, your trauma started at such an early age,
Yep.
all the things that you went through, even the medication masked a lot of that. Of course, the marijuana, prohibited your forward growth. You like to thought it was looking for love in all the wrong places, but if you remember the movie Fridays, they was always gonna do it tomorrow.
Yep.
They was always gonna do it tomorrow. Marijuana says, okay, we're gonna do it tomorrow. So sometimes tomorrow is years from now. Some people still waiting on tomorrow. So
You
I'm
gotta
just
make
glad you
tomorrow
left it
today.
all alone. You elevated into this wonderfully, wow, you are such an inspiration to your age group. I'm just, I'm like Philip. Everybody needs to, all the people that's struggling in any area that you talked about needs to hear the stories. And that's what it's all about. That's what recovery is all about. Each one teach one, because there's so many people thinking that there's no way out. There's no way that I'm ever going to get better. There's no way that this is going to turn around. There's no way that I'm going to be all right. I'm just going to live like this the rest of my life. And that's why suicide is so prevalent today, because
Mhm.
people just don't believe that there's a way out. If a 20-year-old can find a way out of all of that entire paper bag of yours, if you found a way out, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. So thank you so much. I am just, very pleased with what you and whoever you pray to has preserved. because he did not save you for you. And I am so grateful that I had an opportunity to meet you and hear your story. And wow, Tawana, we're gonna have to get her over at the center, and she gonna, we got some youth that need to hear that. I will be talking to my supervisor about it and
I like
see if you're
working
willing.
with the youth at youth center. I
Yeah,
used to talk at a rec center as well.
Well,
yeah.
listen, Destiny, we
So
are
I mean,
definitely
if you're willing, I would talk to my supervisor because I think we just got about, I mean, a whole rack of youth who can't figure out their way out of a joint of weed, and so to
Absolutely.
hear that may give them something to think about. I mean, we can't save lives, but we can sure give you some food for thought if you're interested. You know what I'm saying? So
You're
you are
right.
absolutely a main ingredient in that bowl of spaghetti. Yes,
listen.
indeed.
And
Thank you
Destiny,
so
one of the
much.
things that one of the things we will do also is we're going to pull together in one of our podcasts a panel of other young people to share their stories and to talk about their journey. I'm very interested in hearing more about the issue of domestic violence that you went through at a young age with your intimate partner, because that's an area that older folks as well as young people are coming more and more into these intimate partner violence situations. And how do you deal with it? How do you get out of it? Why do you stay in it? Those kinds of things. Tawana, can you, before we close out, anything else that you want to throw out or add in?
Well, I did have a question. I had two questions I was going to tie together, but I don't think we have time.
We have time. Go ahead.
So, nah, I know we don't, because she's got to respond. So, what I will do is I will just say, good job advocating for yourself. You meant so. Segue from Miss Raven talking about marijuana says, I'll do it tomorrow. Whereas, in your case, you continue to advocate for yourself. Like, this school is not good for me, so you went to another one. This school's not good for me, so I'll go to another one. So I definitely want to congratulate you on that, on advocating for yourself to find the right environment for your education, which then led you to graduating, which then led you to getting accepted into college. So
Yeah.
I congratulate you on that. There's a lot of people who don't smoke weed, who don't have kids, that they just do not have the motivation to do anything with themselves. They think, oh, I went to school today or whatever, or it's just like the bottom line. So
Right.
I will end it there and say, good job on all of that. I'm proud of you. And you know what? Like I say on my own podcast, you were made for a purpose that only you can fulfill.
Thank you.
All I have.
So, Destiny, thank you again for being here. My co-host Raven and Tawana, thank you for being here again today. We are Innergy Inc., and we are producing this podcast called Thrive Live. We're talking to real people with real situations about real solutions. And so we are glad that you joined us today. We hope if you're watching this broadcast live right now, that you'll share it. And we hope if you come across this broadcast at a later time that you'll watch it, that you'll share it. And if you're interested in being a part of this program, you can reach out to us at energyincorporated@gmail.com. That's INNERGY incorporated@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. You can like us on our Facebook pages or on our YouTube channel and leave comments, and we will respond. We'll get to you. If you or someone that you know is looking for support around mental health or substance use, please let us know. Tawana and Raven, myself, we are here for you. We will get you connected to the places where you need to get help. And if you can't get us, you can call 1-888-7-WE-HELP. That's here in the District of Columbia. If you call 311, wherever you may be watching this broadcast from, call 311 and you should be able to get access to someone in your local area that can connect you to services. And if none of that works, reach out to us and we will help you That's what I've been doing for 20 some odd years. We will help you get connected wherever you are. We will work with you to find the right kind of resources for you. So we, again, are sponsored in part by DC Health and Health HIV, and we are grateful for all of your support. One of our major sponsors also is Gilead Pharmaceuticals, and we're grateful for them. AIDS Healthcare Foundation is also a sponsor of our organization this year. We are a part of the Places of Worship Advisory Board in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia Departments of Health. And so we are here doing work in community with our youth, our young adult program, with our community engagement programs, as well as in our resource referral system. So if you need us, we're here. Real people, real stories, real solutions. Thank you, Tawana. Thank you, Raven. And we will see you next time on Thrive Live.